All right, welcome back to another Wright Stew podcast. I am Paul Stewart.
And I am Brian Wright, and we are on Friday, which is typically my favorite day of the week. And hey, we got Good Friday today, so
I'll
a
say
lot of good
it's
stuff.
Good Friday, Brian. Not just any Friday. It's a Good Friday.
Good Friday, Good Friday. And hey, Paulie, so I've been trying to push you to watch the Clubhouse, and I think you fit it in the schedule between Muddy Ball and all your
Yeah.
chores that you do. Tell me, you talked about some of the takeaways, but what's kind of your takeaway episode two? Episode two
I've seen
of
the
Clubhouse.
the first two episodes, and re- first thing that really jumped out, I forgot how much cussing and profanity was used in baseball, and I guess I've just not been around a big league or professional clubhouse. They use the F word like we would say or sort
Yeah,
of thing.
it's a great filler. Probably the most versatile curse word in the four letters. And so I've definitely been guilty of it. It sounds terrible in any other environment. It doesn't sound great in that environment when you watch it but when you're in that environment, it just kind of becomes a part of it. And it's not that I'm proud of it just it almost becomes a part of the language.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and it's used positively, it's used negatively, it's used encouragingly, it's used to tear people down. It's used in every form and fashion. So, good, bad, or indifferent. That definitely jumped out. So the first two episodes basically go through about the first 15 or 16 games or so. And the Red Sox start off really strong, man. So the first episode kind of goes through the offseason a little bit into spring training and then to the season opener, and then the second episode kind of is the home opener and gets a little to the season. So got to see Trevor's story, his injury where he dove for the ball and separated his shoulder or hurt his
what a
left shoulder
fluke
on that play.
play. Yeah, what a
Um,
fluke play. Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's a play that happens 100 times a night in big league games, and that one just it hit wrong. I don't think they actually ever really dove into the specifics of it, but injured there, so really hurt the Red Sox. Another thing that jumped out, especially in the second episode, was how many errors they were making. Just a
That
lot.
jumped up. Yes, yes. Especially when Story went down, it's like they didn't have another shortstop that could play in the whole organization. It was just bizarre to me.
It was crazy, and even the outfield play wasn't great. Like, and I know a lot of them are kind of that do or die play where they're coming, and they were dying a lot. They were charging the ball and kicking off the heel of their glove and not getting the clean throw off, sort of thing. So you don't know if they're going to make the throw and get them out anyway, but still, you'd like to see it handled a little cleaner. And the playing surface in the field is, I mean,
It's
as good as it's going
pristine.
to
Yeah,
get. Yeah.
yeah.
So that really stood out. A lot of the errors. You can see they're focusing on a few players specifically on this. Jaron Duran seems to be one they're really locked in on a lot. And it's interesting to see how he kind of talks about himself. Really, just it doesn't seem like for somebody who is seemingly a rising star, a young star in baseball. Man, self-confidence just low, low, low. Like, I mean, doesn't feel like he really believes in himself all the time, and just I don't know if that I don't think it's an act, man. It seems like he's really
No,
just
no, I don't
beats
think it's an
himself
act
up.
either. And he gets a little bit deeper into it in some more episodes. I would say the thing that was, that's I think maybe I mentioned it in one of our previous podcasts. That was my takeaway that you just don't see many superstars be so self-deprecating.
Yeah,
And I don't even think it's self-deprecating. I mean, it's truly
he's
kind
just
of
beating himself up.
yeah over everything. And especially when you're in a failure sport, you have to have some of that mindset that I can figure this out. It's going to get better. Or man, it's just a miserable existence because there is so much failure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Tristan Cassis, I mean, over the first two episodes, I think the second episode he kind of turned into more of a normal person.
Yeah.
He was doing something like getting his fingernails painted and toenail. It's fine, whatever, to float your boat. But I mean, he specifically says like, "Oh, I do this just to get a rise out of people," sort of thing, and just to see how they react. And he's out there sunbathing naked and or in shorts or whatever it is, and
Yeah, I think he was in like maybe not a thong, but
but it's a
definitely
short
in
shorts, yeah,
yeah,
that
some
sort of thing.
short shorts getting all the sun in.
Uh, but
He's a character.
they showed one of his is either I think high school highlights. He didn't he didn't look, or he still doesn't look like super athletic.
No, I agree with that 100%. And I think he's not getting a lot of play this year. But I would say for what we've all been told as far as what you got to do to even be considered a college recruit, to see how his body moves. He can obviously really swing it, obviously
Yeah,
plus power, but he does not move the way I thought you had to move. Now he's a big guy, but his body, he's just not super. Not even super. He's not even. I would, everybody beats on these 60 times and what you got to get to as, to even be considered a collegiate player. I would be surprised if he's below 7'3", maybe 7'4". He just
yeah,
doesn't look like he moves that well. But yeah, I tend to agree. And that may have been his limitations as a player. I mean, everybody has them. But obviously, Poppy famously wasn't a great mover. He was just a phenomenal hitter.
yeah. And he turned
But
into a
it's
DH. Yeah,
yeah, and he turned into a. I don't know. I definitely agree with that assessment though, and yeah, I definitely agree.
yeah, yeah. So then we kind of talked about with Jaron Duran has. It was kind of funny seeing him fix his. He has an old Ford Bronco that he drives, and just hasn't given it up. It's probably something he's had since college or high school or whatever it is, and just loves the truck and just one of those guys. And he probably has another car, I would imagine, but had trouble getting it started one game. So he was talking to it sounded like his old man on the phone and getting it going. Cass was just kind of there, like, "Hey man, like just there's people that fix that. Why are you doing that? Like you could." I feel like I would have been Cassis in that situation. Like,
100%,
and then you're gonna get your hand
100%.
stuck in something there and ruin your career because yeah,
Yeah, well, I didn't even think about that, but I definitely reminded. And then Cassis calls AAA limousines. He thinks he's calling AAA,
yeah,
and he's
yeah,
asking them for help. And it's like, yeah, Cassis has never touched a car, and you got a guy Durant who has all the tools, all the physical tools to be a legitimate superstar. I think
yeah,
the mental side I still question, but he has all the physical tools. There's no question. And working on his like 1991 Bronco.
yeah.
And
Good looking truck. I like it.
yeah, yeah. I agree. Need to
Uh,
get some work done.
the
Looks
other
like.
thing that really stood out, and I saw those because I was part of the Red Sox organization. I was in AAA with the Sox for a year, and we got a little bit of press and media. It wasn't anything close to what Boston does, clearly, but man, the media, the fans live and die with that ball club, man. And they've been dying a little more, and they're just all over them, and everything is just under a microscope. And I mean, the fans are just they're so tough. I mean, Bayo had that one uh, part when he was talking about. Yeah, I didn't pitch well, and somebody said, I hope you and your family get hit by a car on the way out of the park, or something like that.
I know it seems a little bit strong. Hey, on him. Hey, did you notice? And maybe a lot of guys do this, but where he went in between innings
Yeah, I
wasn't in
wanted
the
to mention
dugout.
that as well. That was really odd to me. I don't know if that's a thing that everybody does in the big leagues or if it's just him. So for the audience, if you haven't, we're spoiling the show so far. The first couple
Yeah,
episodes.
you need to watch it. We've given you heads up.
Yeah, we're
You need to
kind of
watch it.
telling you what's going on and what our reaction is. So sorry, it's a little late, but spoiler alerts. But when Bayo, as soon as he finishes the inning, he walks into the tunnel, and there's I guess a couple cages off to the side, and he doesn't sit in the dugout. And there's a monitor, so he's kind of watching the game or listening to the game on the monitor. But it almost feels like Brian that he's a boxer and he's in his corner, and he's got like a couple guys in there, like his hype guys, and Andrew Bailey, the pitching coach, comes in and gives him a little, hey, here's who you're coming up to face, and here's how we're going to approach it. and he's not in the dugout. He's in like that little area, and sometimes he's kind of storming around, ticked off, and cussing and screaming and hitting stuff, and sometimes he's just there, kind of hyping himself up. And man, it is really odd though. He's not in the dugout at all. Like, I mean, and he's not far from it. He's just in the tunnel. But yeah, I
I
thought
was
that
going
was
to
really
ask
odd.
you, was that something you saw other pitchers do, or is that completely unique as far as your perspective?
I've never seen that. I mean, and again, I was never in the big leagues, so I don't know. Most minor league stadiums, you don't have that. That luxury. Yeah, occasionally, guys would go back into the clubhouse if it was attached to the dugout to change a shirt or change their spikes if they weren't. Just stuff like that. But it was. Yeah, never did I see somebody just go sit in the clubhouse. I don't even know if a manager would have like kind of allowed that. Honestly, it was.
Yeah, I felt like it was unique. I felt like it was really unique. I mean, again, the inside look kind of gives you perspective, and I think I definitely have different perspective at my age now than I did at that age. Now, looking at those guys, I see even guys in the big leagues, and Corey eventually hits on it, but just some immaturity, just some, you know, slowing your mind down so you can play the game the way you're capable of playing.
Yeah.
A lot of those players just aren't there yet. It's all just super sped up. Adrenaline looks like it's going 1,000 miles an hour. And then have they got to Bowser, the 31-year-old rookie? Have they
No,
told his
I
story
haven't
yet?
seen that part yet.
All
No.
right, so that'll be episode 3. That'll be a good one. And so, any other takeaways from the first two episodes?
Well, what the chief of baseball operation, Craig Breslow said. So they were talking about pitchers, and so Craig Breslow is the chief baseball officer of the Red Sox, and he pitched 12 years in the major leagues for Padres, the Red Sox, a couple other teams. But he said something that I thought was interesting, odd, something I didn't really like. But he said the the fastball is essentially the easiest pitch to hit in baseball. And so he says, well, so why are we throwing so many fastballs? Like, why is that the dominant pitch? So we're going to throw pitches that spin, that move, that break, that do all these other things because they're tougher to hit. And just conceptually, I understand what he's saying, but everything in my estimation is built off of the. If you're just throwing changeups, then what's your fastball? Like
That's right. That's right.
like growing up for you and I, Brian, like establish the fastball. That was
Yeah, that was the, because then you could play everything off of it, and they use the word tunneling now, but we used to talk about, hey, you can set up all your other pitches off of your fastball.
yeah. So, and I know my one of my daughters, or both of them are pitchers in college, but they have one of their pitching coaches said something very similar at one of the schools there. It was like, hey, we're going to throw screwballs and drop balls, and we're not throwing any fastballs. I'm like, man, sometimes you just need to throw a fastball and get a ground ball or a pop up or something, man. Just throw it in there. And that's one of those things too. You watch guys in the K's during batting practice. Like the goal of batting practice for the pitcher is to throw it down the middle or side of the plate, whatever it is, and for the guy to get a hit or for the guy to have success, right? How many times in BP do guys roll over it, pop up in the cage? Yeah, they're not hitting home runs every time. They're not hitting nukes every time. Like guys get out, get themselves out. It's not easy. So like I don't know. I mean, and clearly we know how the season ended for them. They're 500, so I don't know if that's a great thing, and that could be contributing to arm injuries and other factors as
Well, no,
well.
that was a big takeaway for me too. Out of that, it just didn't sit right with me, and maybe that was. I'm obviously open to change and changing the game for various, whether to make it a little bit quicker, cleaned up, or more interesting. But just that thought process kind of turned me off of him. I mean, and again, it may be right. And I guess we've always talked about fastballs having some run on them. Your more successful guys have run. They call them sinkers, but it used to be, just got a fastball that has run on it. Everybody throws across their body a little bit. A lot of times you'll see it, a sink and dive away from the
Yeah.
left-handed hitter. as a righty thrower. But, man, it just did not sit right because, like you said, there's guys that they bring in from the field that are just position players that are throwing 60 miles an hour
And they're getting
that get
people out
guys
left
out.
and right, yeah.
And so there's something to establishing that fastball. It'll be interesting to see if that philosophy works. Clearly, the Red Sox, I'm sure he doesn't have this information just isolated. I'm sure it's not really his opinion. I'm sure the data backs up what he's saying. But you almost wonder if it's data that is kind of an after effect, right? Hey, more fastballs are hit hard than any other pitch. Well, it's because you throw more fastballs.
Yeah.
Right? It's like there's more murders in Chicago. Yes, it's not they have their issues, but there's a lot more people than there are in Ramsey or where Asheboro, where I grew up. And so I mean, it's kind of, you wonder if the evidence isn't kind of a byproduct of the actual, of the data. And so I would just say, there may be some truth to it, and maybe they come out and they win 100 games this year, and they're competitive in the postseason. But to me, because clearly every pitcher to be able to get to the big leagues, and we've heard it, and we continue to hear it, they got to be throwing 92, 93, hitting 95. You don't even see the 88 guy anymore. And so if that is the case, clearly fastball matters. But you got to establish it for it to matter. To me, if I was a hitter at this point and I was facing Boston, knowing that's philosophy, and especially most nights, now there's exceptions to this rule, but most nights a pitcher he's not able to throw strikes with all four pitches. There's exceptions, clearly.
Yeah.
But usually their fastball they can throw a strike with, and then one of their off speed. Rarely do you see, if you watch games intently, they're not throwing all four pitches for strikes.
No.
And again, there's nights that they're close. But so I would just go up there. You could almost look off speed, and especially pressure situations, knowing that's how they want to get people out. And I think it kind of shared some information that I think kind of plays as a disadvantage for Boston. But again, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Because again, I don't think he has that opinion because that's his opinion. I'm sure there's some data that has backed up that opinion.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. We've talked about the analytics and how that plays into everything, and that part's kind of nuts. And I guess the last thing on that, I saw my old friend Raquel Ferreira. So she was in player development when I was with the Sox, and now she's like assistant GM. So doing good things. So awesome to see Raquel in there. Hey, Brian, the other thing I was reading about today. So Darryl Strawberry, and we talked about this the other day a little bit. Darryl Strawberry made some comments about Major League Baseball needing to focus and develop and market the game more to inner cities and into Black youth. So on opening day rosters this year, Black players made up 6.2% of opening day rosters. And that's a tick up from last year, which was 6%. But in 1991, it was 18%. So, almost 1 in 5 players was a Black American player. And, they cite some different things on there. And they're saying a lot of it is, these inner cities don't have baseball fields anymore. A lot of them have turned into soccer fields or, multi-purpose soccer, lacrosse, that sort of thing. And so Darryl Strawberry actually had two sons who played college basketball. His oldest son DJ was at Maryland, and then his second son Jordan was at Mercer, and both were really good players. But I thought it was interesting. We talked about it the other day, and Daryl's probably listening to the Wright Stew podcast, if I had to guess.
I would suspect so too. I would say, and I'm sure the easy answer is, hey, they need to do something. The hard result or answer or question that you have to ask is ultimately why. And we've kind of hit on a little bit, but part of it is that it is very much a skill sport that you need a community that is balled in baseball because you have to practice this skill. And by the time you're in high school, if you haven't practiced this skill a lot, even if you're a phenomenal athlete, you can't play the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unlike basketball, unlike football, unlike other sports, basketball you obviously can do a lot on your own. Football, it's a lot of just athletic ability,
Well,
and you
man,
can lift
look,
weights and you can do different things to become a better athlete.
in the NFL, two of the greatest tight ends in recent. So Antonio Gates was a college basketball player,
Yeah,
right? Tony Gonzalez played college like these tight ends. They never even played football. Jimmy Graham played at the University of Miami basketball, and he became one of the best tight ends in like NFL history, like legitimately. And so was Gates. So you're right. But I think you can run, catch, those transfer, but they don't transfer to putting on a mitt and catching a ball in center field or tracking a ball, that sort of thing.
yeah, and I think
Certainly,
the other thing that is kind of it's hard for me as a, it's not really hard for me to say this, but it's a truth that you know the numbers in regards to two parent households when it comes to black people or black children are significantly less than they
yeah,
were 40 years ago. And you and I both know how much time we spend with our kids. And if the father is not in the house,
yeah, that's fair.
he doesn't have anybody to practice with. I mean, your kid nor my kid or most of the kids that we coach and play with, if their father wasn't really involved,
It's
they
a different,
wouldn't
yeah,
be good enough to be on the team.
it's a different story for sure. Yeah, and that's
And
what.
I'll just say one more thing on that. I heard
Yeah,
Deion Sanders, somebody asking that. He was on one of the podcasts, and they're asking about the hardest sport. Then they're asking why there weren't why there were so fewer black players. And he obviously said, hey, hitting a baseball is the hardest thing to do in sports. That's what Deion Sanders said. And the second thing he said was basically echoing the comments I just made about the lack of fathers in the home and it
huh,
being such a skill required sport.
that's
And
interesting.
and so again, as much as sometimes I went back and forth on loving Dion, not necessarily liking it, but core, I tend to agree, and he's honest in that assessment because it does require so much time to be able to get good enough skill wise to be relevant in the sport. Go ahead, Paulie. I'm sorry about
Yeah,
that for
no,
interrupting.
no, that's a really interesting point. Getting more into the kind of the social aspect of it and the familial and that sort of thing and what it takes. And the other thing I've thought about too, from a socioeconomic perspective,
Oh yeah,
baseball is not cheap at
not
all.
anymore. Not
I
anymore. No.
mean, to have a legitimate nice baseball bat, you're talking about $300 minimum,
Yep.
right? To have a nice glove, 250.
Yep.
A pair of spikes and turfs, another $100 each.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's just the bare minimum stuff, right? And
And you hadn't even paid to get on a team yet.
yeah, you got to pay to get on a team. You've got then your uniform fees, and then your dues for the fall season, and then these camps and all this stuff. And it's like,
And you haven't even practiced yet.
dude,
You
and
know?
that goes into like, and then and like Darryl talked about finding a field space, finding somewhere to play,
Yeah.
and then having to have at least one other person to go do it with. Whereas I think like with basketball, you just got to shoot all day.
Yeah,
What
that's right.
what
Or
do
you
you
work
need?
on
You need a
dribbling in your
You
driveway.
need a $20
Yeah.
basketball and a pair of shoes. Like that's and those shoes can be some beat up old high tops, or they can be brand new, LeBrons or whatever you want to wear. But it does. I mean, I know once you get into the AAU circuit, yeah, I've been there. I know that costs money, but realistically, it's not as much money as to play baseball. So there's some of that as well, and then football. Really, football is probably one of the least expensive, at least from my perspective, right? Because you're playing high school, right?
Yeah.
It's free, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I know they do fundraisers and things like that, right? But
But the kids it's more close to what it was when I was a kid, to where essentially you didn't have to pay anything. They provide maybe you got to buy a mouthpiece,
yeah,
maybe you need to buy some undergarments, but you're
yeah,
not
cup,
buying.
that kind of stuff. Nothing.
Yeah, and so I mean you're not spending nearly the money that you have to spend, and the truth of the matter is football is a more popular sport. It's if you go to Friday night football game at your local high school, if you're in a decent sized community,
Oh, that's
it's going to
fun.
be packed.
Yeah, that's fun.
And so you get the hype around it. And baseball, it may or may not be, depending on what your situation is. And so, yeah, it's really really a tough deal. I don't see it changing. I don't think, you know. Unfortunately, there's just so many variables. It's not one thing that's caused the lowering of that. It's multifaceted, and it's really almost a cultural problem when it comes to why there's not as many players in the MLB. Hey, but talking about not as many black players or in the MLB, Limestone College in South Carolina has closed their doors, and
Well,
obviously,
I don't think it's quite official yet. It's getting there, but they could be. Well, no, wait, you might be right here. Here's the headline. Some articles are saying faces possible closure. Others are they're shutting down. Yeah, so you're right,
so
Brian. Yeah.
my understanding is that they have told the recruits and current players of all sports to go find somewhere else to play. Now, in a lot of cases, depending on what sport you're playing, you may or may not be able to talk to other teams right now.
Yeah.
And we locally have a kid who was going to Limestone. And, now he's kind of searching around. Is there a JUCO? Is there somebody somewhere that I can go play? This is a kid that probably would have been able to go somewhere. Maybe not. Limestone's a really good athletic school. Famously, their men's lacrosse was really good, Division II. The women's lacrosse was pretty good, Division II. The soccer, I think, was pretty good, Division II. They were a really good sporting school. But the reality is you got to go find a different place to play, and kids are kind of in a situation. I saw a kid tonight that was committed there, and I was just looking at him and going through my son's been playing middle school baseball, and we've seen kids throw in the low 80s. So I was expecting something else, knowing that this kid was going. But this kid was 81, 84, really knew how to pitch, could legitimately throw 4 pitches for a strike at times inconsistently, and was really effective. But there were schools there, community college there, looking at him, and they were all turned off by the lack of velocity.
Huh.
And I was not surprised and surprised all at the same time. I think even back in our day, if you were pitching, and it didn't seem like he come out loose. His first inning, he was really like 79 to 81. And then the second inning to the sixth inning, he was kind of 81 to 84. And so I don't know if that cooks or that works anymore. And and again, these aren't big junior colleges. These are colleges. One of them's just getting ready to start next year, and they're trying to fill their roster. And so it's just really tough now that you have a player that was committed, thought he was going somewhere. I'm sure it's a really tough situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And man, you feel for all those kids on there because they've made a commitment to be the program, and when you're going through the recruiting process, I don't think that's a question you might ask is like, hey coach, how long you plan on being around here? I really like you. I'd love to be under your tutelage for the next few years. A question I don't think you even consider is like, hey, how financially stable is this institution? Are we going to be okay? Are we going to
Right.
and it says
And it's
they're in
just,
$30 million in debt, and that's. I mean, I've got my soapbox on what I think about colleges and higher education and the benefit of it. I mean, I've seen a lot of colleges struggling financially.
yeah, it just doesn't make sense
I
knowing what they
mean,
charge.
well, yeah, like there's some. I don't know, man.
It's, it
That's a
feels
whole
like
different
some real
podcast. But
mismanagement.
what are the options for? I mean, let's talk baseball and softball, I guess, specifically. That's where we kind of play the best, Brian. But I know they've got a lot of other sports. So realistically, now are all of these young athletes just jumping into the transfer portal?
Yeah. And I was talking to a couple of JUCO coaches, and they're basically were sending out anybody that was a freshman. They were reaching out to directly to try to get them to be a part of their program. I mean, not necessarily to be a part of, but to at least engage in conversation. And that's currently at Limestone. And so the flip side is that some of those players may or may not be good enough. There's going to be some ends of careers for sure. Because if you're a junior and you're a D2 guy that's been fighting to get on the field and doesn't have stats or doesn't have great stats for the last 2 or 3 years, your chances of going to play somewhere are pretty slim. You maybe go to a D3 and figure out how to make it work if you're just completely dead set on playing. But I would imagine a lot of careers are ending with this deal. And then if you're a recruit right now, I don't know what you do. I mean, I think you kind of go into, especially if you're a senior, you were 3 months ago or a month ago, probably, you were excited about getting ready to go to college.
You were putting,
And that,
yeah, you were putting the T-shirt on. You were at the high school making the announcement. You were having your sign-in day. You were all smiles. I mean, we've all seen those pictures. And man, I've been to a couple. It's a really great day for kind of all involved, and it's so much. And like we just talked about, Brian, all the practices, all the hard work that the kids go through, but the families as well, man. It's a
yeah, very
true.
much so.
It's a. I mean, it's a really big deal. Then I'm sure this isn't funny, but I'm laughing because I did the same thing. Bunch of parents have invested, a few $100 in limestone. Yeah,
Oh yeah, that stuff getting burned up at the first cool night. Maybe we
yeah.
have to wait to the fall. There's still cool nights now, but and maybe it's a memory. Maybe it becomes an archive because that university will no longer
Oh gosh.
exist.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
but it is, yeah. I think ultimately the thing I was taken back was, you know, you really got to be careful how you treat guys when you're through the recruiting process. So if you had, I know it's not easy to tell people no, and it's easier to kind of send emails and text and that kind of communication. But how you communicate can depend on and how you handled yourself during that process probably will show how many doors you still may have open. And there may have been everything that you did right up until that point and how you communicated and how you. But if you tried to, if you shut doors immaturely, it's going to be hard to get those to open back up. And
yeah.
so yeah, that was kind of my takeaway. Make sure that, because even though you think you've committed and this is somewhat final, none of this is final, and it can obviously change when you're in the process. So how
Yeah.
you carry yourself was kind of my takeaway,
And
because you don't
that's
really know.
Yeah, and that's a good lesson. So to anybody out there, parents or student athletes right now who are listening, and don't burn bridges. I remember that was one thing that I did, and all those years ago, right in the mid '90s, and when the 1900s, such ancient times. But I don't think I did this on my own. I'm sure my parents kind of prompted me to do it, but there was, there a handful of schools who were, really close, and I was considering, and first I called NC State to commit and say, hey, this is where I want to be. I'm excited to be, part of Wolfpack Nation. But I called a couple other schools and said, hey, I appreciate you recruiting me. Thank you for the opportunity, but unfortunately, I'm going to be going somewhere else, that sort of thing. And I remember one of them. I think my mom saw later on, a year or so later, and that was the first thing he brought up. He was like, "Hey, Paul, like Paul called me," and
Yeah.
he's like, "I don't like. Not a lot of kids do that." He's that meant we weren't happy about it, but it meant a lot for us to hear from him, and yeah, it just kind of spoke to character and that sort of thing. And,
Well, no, I think it does speak to character. I think it does speak to character for sure. Hey, I'm gonna get you out of here on this. Hey, Paul Stu brought me pickles today, and let me just say, Paul's pickles are on point. My children love them. We're already ate one jar, and so I keep trying to tell he needs to sell his pickles and just label them Paul's pickle. But hey, I just want to tell you, thank you.
oh
They've
yeah.
all one jar has already been consumed. But hey, man, I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. Well, hey, everybody out there, we hope you have an amazing Good Friday, and we appreciate you listening today. Hey, don't forget about that merch shop out there. We got the merch shop. You can hop on our socials and find a link to that. So get you a little Right Stew Podcast T-shirt, long sleeve shirt, hoodie, maybe a ball cap. If you're going to go and check a ball game out. So check that out. We would love for you to wear that, and then pop it on your socials and let us know about it. So hey, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Have an amazing day.
Out, go pack, and Tigers.